This is the second last poem in Rest on the Flight into Egypt, and it's a prose poem. A moment of pure waking. Why was that city there in the middle of my sleep? Decaying in the deeply forested virgin plains of sleep, gray-green and golden wet, with paths that wander a long time beside streams before they turn to cross the silver water. From fresh, unsettled tracts of sleep rose that narrow, squalid city, ancient in its strip of slag. Its women kneaded a chalky dough, the same their flesh seemed made of. As they went through streets twisted between brick hives, rattling on the walls, stale crumbs rattling on their tin dishes, they knew but could not hear the far-off tramp of men and children into high corroded metal doors or rocky holes. 1,000,000 feet in such unison, they were one pair of feet, one worker all alone. There in the flowering desert it stood, still laboring, the city where we were born, the city we buried long ago. No dream, but the opposite, a moment of pure waking. Helpless between sleep's two ranges, the one that wells up from yesterday's dark, the other that sinks toward dawn, I saw it with all its people, for no reason, not wanting to. No matter that they had escaped already into death and forgottenness, now it would never let them go. So they went on working where the mines had collapsed long since, the mills rotted. Just as before, the wavering tapping of their hands each day wore down the rock more than an era of rain. Then, watching, I fell back unaware to sleep with blue and dark gold meadows, with wheeling crowds of silent birds, but no plowed field, no houses, ruins, tools of the pioneer. And moving out through fresh woods, I left behind that city and people who had to die, work, and be. From Rest on the Flight into Egypt, this is the poem Science. Knowing that girls once went naked under slender palms didn't end my desire for these women in mud and sweat-caked nylons. And understanding that everyone closes the door, the mouth, and does just what I do in silence, this only left me more secret in myself. I learned our open ways contradict the cruel past, yet felt I was rightly condemned, chained in a black cell in a castle founded on injustice. And the discovery I'm like all others, am nothing but others, is what hardened the darkness close around me and made me keep alone. This is the first poem from Rest on the Flight into Egypt, and it's a prose poem. It's entitled The General. While I was planning my campaign, very carefully, to be invincible, designing the strategy, collecting the overwhelming force, the enemy grew so old that it was shameful to hate him. Our propaganda, our irresistible self-justification, fell on the whimsy of some old men and many more old women in that country of widows. Then we swarmed across the border. Bayonets flashed through human suet, gray meat that sagged earthward and slid from the bones of its own accord. The disease and stink of that country offended our celebrations, but we held them nonetheless, having waited for victory so long. Now we possessed the field alone, and I went out into the corn, walked and stopped under the gold sky, heard the rattle of my sword and restless clashings of dry stalks. This poem, Wren House, is the last poem in the book Rest on the Flight into Egypt, and its meter is iambic septenarius, or iambic heptameter, which is the meter that Blake often employs for his so-called prophetic works. And this poem includes a statement, "Find its central moment and the day is yours," which is a kind of paraphrase of a sentence of Blake's in one of those prophetic books. Wren House. There is a Wren house invisible now because, as people say, it's destroyed long ago and vanished. Wooden on a wooden pole, head high to a grown man, as if the homemade house, with wrens going and coming in their roughly sawn round doors, or stopping to rest on a grainy threshold, is another human face to look him in the eye and talk. But it's much taller to a child. Up past my farthest reaches the excited wrens rush all day between their house, the peach tree, and bright vines, sheltering my grandmother's rough red wall, rough, dusky red, because it's made with paving brick, not light, smooth building brick. My grandmother invisible too, being, as people call it, dead. Both houses hers, one for the wrens, rent-free to rhyme their song of fresh syllables, "Find its central moment and the day is yours." Now's February, as it was the time she died, and as she died I had to stay, I thought, here in this city, and be too busy to think of her, preserving my pathetic job, licking up my substance by writing a lying report to get some government money for a businessman. But I do not for this see Toronto as a pit like those where now the Roman slaves dig salt, no light or hope, and no one troubles himself about their rescue, saying they all died and ended ages ago, and can't be helped or charged now against me. Wrong, say the wrens, and wrench me back to life. Once I stood on the asphalt height of the parking lot behind the Church of the Transfiguration, reciting her favorite prayer to the moon over the banks and CN Tower, to return her to her garden, remembering what she told me from her bed after the stroke at the foot of the cellar stairs. I prayed to all the saints in heaven, and no one heard me. Me neither. What I asked for didn't happen, but what I wanted? A wren is a mighty being, but to sing my wants is maybe beyond even him. Whatever can be destroyed is going to be destroyed. Patience, patience. Hate what needs to be hated. All is finished. All's completed.